Every year my parents forgot to buy me a Christmas gift. Not once, not twice, but for 23 years straight. But the year I finally bought myself a whole manor, they showed up with a locksmith, trying to break in and take it like it belonged to them. Stay with me while I tell you what really happened, and if this story connects with you, don't forget to show some love by supporting our channel in your own way. My name is Manor, and for as long as I can remember, I was the extra piece in my own family. The one nobody really wanted but kept around because it was easier than explaining why I wasn't there. Christmas was always the clearest reminder of that. While my brother Grant tore through piles of gifts, everything from new bikes to drones to the dog he begged for, I sat quietly, pretending it didn't hurt when my parents said, "Oh, we forgot again. Maybe next time." There was never a next time. I learned early how to smile through the sting, how to hide the way my chest tightened when my mom whispered to a neighbor that Grant was our real pride, while I was just there, how to laugh it off when my dad told me not to be dramatic, just because I wanted to feel included. By the time I was 12, I'd already stopped expecting anything. Not gifts, not love, not a kind word. My job was to stay out of the way and not upset the perfect little picture they had built around my brother. But even a quiet kid can dream. And I dreamed of a different life, a life where I mattered, where the walls didn't feel like they were closing in every time my parents compared me to Grant, where Christmas didn't feel like a reminder that I was invisible. That dream stayed with me, year after year, through every forgotten present, every ignored birthday. Every time my mother sighed like talking to me was a chore she didn't feel like doing. And slowly, it turned into something stronger, a promise. One day, I would leave. One day, I would build something that was mine. One day, I would live in a place where no one could pretend I didn't exist. That promise became the fuel that pushed me through school, through the loneliness, through the quiet tears I hid in my pillow. It became the fire in my chest whenever I heard Grant brag, or my parents praise him like he hung the stars. I didn't know how or when, but I swore I'd make a future no one could take from me. And when I finally bought that old manor, the one I restored with my own hands, the one that felt like breathing fresh air after years underwater, I thought I had done it. I thought I had escaped. I didn't know then that my parents would try to break in and claim it as theirs. But that comes later. Maren Ellery grew up in a house where love was handed out like a prize, and she never seemed to win it. Her parents, Dorian and Lissa Ellery, didn't even try to hide who their favorite child was. Grant, her older brother, walked through life as if every light in the world was pointed directly at him. And Maren learned early that she lived in the shadows. Christmas made it painfully obvious. She remembered being 7, sitting cross-legged on the floor while Grant ripped open a brand new gaming console, shouting with joy. Their parents clapped, laughed, even took pictures. Maren waited quietly, hands folded, hoping maybe she'd get something small, a book, a doll, anything that said they had thought about her. When her mother finally glanced her way, she said, "Oh, we forgot to get yours. Next year, okay?" Maren nodded even though her throat burned. Next year came, and nothing changed. Grant got a shiny new bike, blue and silver, the kind every kid in their neighborhood wanted. He rode circles around the living room, showing off while their dad filmed him. Maren stood near the tree, pretending not to notice there were no gifts with her name on them. When she asked gently if maybe her gift was hidden somewhere, her mother sighed and said, "Your gift's delayed, Maren. Don't make a big deal out of it." It never arrived. The pattern repeated like clockwork. A dog for Grant one Christmas, a fluffy golden puppy he named Atlas. Maren had begged for a pet for years, but her parents always said pets were too much work, right up until Grant asked. The moment he did, they drove 2 hours to pick one up. Maren didn't even get to hold the puppy first. She tried so hard to earn a place in their hearts. She studied late into the night, hoping good grades would make them proud. When her report card came back with straight A's, she ran to show her mother. Lissa barely looked up from her phone. "That's nice," she said dismissively, while bragging loudly to a friend on the phone about how Grant had scored 1 goal in his soccer game. When Maren tried helping around the house, folding laundry, washing dishes, sweeping floors, her parents called it expected, while the bare minimum Grant did was celebrated like an achievement. The small, cutting moments etched themselves into her memory. Like the afternoon she passed by the kitchen and heard her mother whispering to a neighbor, "Maren's just a burden. Always has been." Her mother didn't know Maren was there. Maren froze in the hallway, holding her breath so they wouldn't hear her crying. She learned to swallow her pain, to keep her voice small, to hope quietly, even though hope hurt her every time. But deep inside, something else was forming too, a wound that would later turn into determination. A quiet promise that she would never again beg for love from people who never intended to give it. When Marin turned 18, she thought maybe things would finally feel different. Maybe adulthood would bring some kind of freedom, or at least a softer place to land. But instead, it delivered the moment that shattered whatever hope she had left for her family. It happened on a random afternoon, the kind where nothing special was supposed to happen. Marin was walking down the hallway toward the kitchen when she heard her parents talking in low voices. She paused, not because she wanted to listen, but because she heard her name. Her father's voice came first. "Grant, don't worry about your sister. She won't amount to much anyway." The words hit her like cold water. Her mother added, sounding almost bored, "Exactly. You focus on yourself. Marin's always been average. She'll probably stick around here, do something simple, nothing you need to think about." And then Grant laughed. A short, sharp laugh, the kind that told her he agreed completely. Marin stood there, frozen, feeling the air disappear from her lungs. She had always known they didn't see her the way she wished they would, but hearing it out loud made something inside her collapse. It wasn't just disappointment, it was a kind of grief. A realization that she had spent her whole life trying to make people proud who had already decided she wasn't worth the effort. She didn't walk into the room. She didn't confront them. She didn't cry loudly or slam a door. She simply turned around and went to her bedroom. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long time, staring at the walls she had lived between for 18 years. Every memory, every forgotten Christmas gift, every ignored report card, every time they looked past her as if she wasn't there, pressed against her chest. And for the first time, instead of wishing things would change, she accepted that they never would. So she made a decision. That night, while everyone slept, Marin pulled out an old suitcase. She folded her clothes quietly, packing only what she truly needed. A few outfits, her school documents, a small envelope of savings she had earned from part-time work, and the tiny notebook where she kept her goals written down in shaky handwriting. No tears. No hesitation. She left a note on her empty dresser, not for them, but for herself. Build a life they can't ignore. The next morning, she was gone before sunrise. She got on a bus to a nearby town and started the first of 2 jobs, working mornings at a small diner and evenings cleaning offices. She applied for every scholarship she could find, writing essays late into the night, refusing to give up even when she was exhausted. Slowly, step by step, she created a life on her own terms. She didn't call her family. She didn't look back. She didn't need their approval anymore. The day she received her first scholarship letter, she held it tightly and whispered a promise to herself. "I will build something so big, they will choke on their own regret." Marin's first years on her own were nothing like the stories people told about freedom. There were no carefree nights or spontaneous adventures. Her life became a quiet grind, a long stretch of days where survival came down to how long she could stay awake and how much she could push herself without falling apart. College wasn't easy, not when she had no family support, no safety net, and barely enough money to cover rent. She worked nights at an industrial laundry, a place where the heat felt like standing inside a furnace and the machines roared louder than her thoughts. She sorted piles of dirty linens until her fingers stung and her arms ached. Some nights she walked home with the smell of chemicals stuck to her clothes, her body too tired to even complain. During the day, she attended classes with her eyes burning from lack of sleep. She sat in the back row, quiet and unnoticed, determined to keep her grades strong because she knew school was her only ticket out of the life she had escaped. Later, when the laundry job cut her hours, she found work at a small vet clinic. It was still tiring, but softer in a way. She cleaned cages, held nervous pets still during checkups, and mopped floors after closing. The animals didn't judge her. They didn't compare her to anyone. They simply existed, and in their gentle way, they made her feel less alone. It was in college that she met Rhett Mallory and Tessa Brand. They weren't flashy or dramatic people, just kind. Quietly, steadily kind. Rhett shared notes with her without asking why she always looked tired. Tessa offered her a place to sit with them at lunch and never pushed her to talk more than she wanted. Little by little, they slid into her life like pieces she never knew were missing. They celebrated her small wins, encouraged her when she doubted herself, and never once made her feel like she was too much or not enough. For the first time, Marin felt what it was like to be seen without conditions. Even with their support, she remained fiercely private. She didn't tell them about her family. She didn't mention the Christmas mornings that still stung or the words that had pushed her out the door at 18. Her past stayed locked away, and she focused on the one thing she could control: her future. After graduation, she entered the real estate appraisal field. It wasn't glamorous at first. She started at the bottom, doing basic assessments, double-checking numbers, and learning everything she could from anyone willing to teach. She showed up early, stayed late, and kept her head down. Slowly, she moved up. Not because someone helped her, but because she refused to quit. Every step felt earned. Every achievement felt like proof that she wasn't the average girl her parents had written off. But even with progress, the journey was lonely. Every bill, every emergency, every fear, she faced alone. Still, she kept going, because she was building something bigger than a career. She was building a life that belonged entirely to her. When Marin turned 27, she didn't celebrate with a party or a trip. She marked the moment by opening an email that changed everything. A promotion she had worked years for. A real one. The kind that didn't just raise her salary, but raised her entire sense of what her life could become. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was moving forward. With that promotion came something else she never expected. The courage to look at homes for sale instead of renting tiny apartments with thin walls and unreliable heaters. She wasn't searching for anything huge, just a place that felt safe. But fate had other plans. One evening, while scrolling through listings, a picture stopped her cold. A large, old manor in Vermont, tucked behind oak trees and winter-bare branches. Sableford House. The listing said it was discounted because of its age, outdated wiring, and local rumors that it was unlucky. Most buyers avoided it, but Marin kept staring. It wasn't perfect, not even close. The paint was peeling, the windows fogged over, and the garden looked wild and forgotten. But the bones were strong, the structure solid. And something inside her whispered that this house was meant for someone who understood what it felt like to be overlooked. She drove up to Vermont that weekend. The air was crisp, and snow clung to the edges of the driveway. When she stepped inside, the floors creaked under her feet as if waking up from a long sleep. Dust floated through the sunlight, and the place smelled like old wood and quiet winters. Marin ran her hand along the banister of the grand staircase. It felt grounded, steady, something she could depend on. Something she could build a future in. For a moment, she imagined herself living there, making her own holidays, her own traditions, her own sense of home. That was the moment she decided. She bought Sableford House with her savings, her promotion money, and every ounce of faith she had in herself. When she signed the papers, her hands shook. Not from fear, but from the realization that she finally owned something no one had given her, no one could take, and no one could belittle. The work started immediately. She spent weekends pulling up old carpets, evenings sanding down floors, and mornings painting walls with colors that made her feel warm instead of invisible. She watched countless tutorials, made mistakes, fixed them, and kept going. Sometimes Rhett and Tessa visited and helped her haul equipment or paint trim. They laughed, ate pizza on the floor, and teased her about becoming a mysterious manor owner. But most nights, she worked alone, music playing softly while she repaired the house piece by piece. It became more than a renovation. It became healing. Every crack she patched felt like closing an old wound. Every room she finished felt like taking back a part of her life that had been denied. When she finally stepped back to look at the house glowing in the winter light, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: pride. Sableford House wasn't just a home. It was her freedom, her proof, her quiet victory. 9 years passed without a single call, text, or message from Marin's parents. She had learned to live without expecting anything from them, especially not love. So when her phone lit up with her mother's name one cold December morning, she stared at the screen for a long time before answering. Her mother's voice came coated in fake warmth. "Marin, sweetheart, we've been thinking about you. It's Christmas time. Family should be together." Marin almost laughed. They hadn't cared about her for nearly a decade, but suddenly they wanted togetherness? Still, she didn't hang up. A part of her, the part that had been trained to be polite and careful, answered slowly. "You want to come here?" "Oh, honey, we'd love to," her mother replied too quickly, like the idea had already been decided. "Your father misses you. Grant does too." That was the moment Marin knew something was wrong. Her brother had never missed anything about her. Not even when she left. She hesitated, but curiosity and a quiet need to confront the ghosts of her past made her say yes. "All right, you can come for Christmas Eve." When the day arrived, She stood at the door of Sableford House, her stomach tight. The moment they stepped inside, the air shifted. Her mother didn't hug her. Her father didn't say he was happy to see her. Grant walked in like he owned the place. Her mother's eyes scanned the foyer. "Well, this is bigger than I expected." The words weren't a compliment, they were a warning. Her father tapped a wall with his knuckle. "How did you afford something like this? Your job must pay very well." Marin forced a small smile. "I worked hard." Her mother's lips curled. "Hard enough to buy a manor?" Grant whistled loudly, wandering into the living room like a tourist. "Wow, nice floors. Must have cost a fortune." He kept drifting away, disappearing into random hallways as if mapping the place. Marin followed him with her eyes. Something tightened in her chest. Her mother touched a decoration on the mantel, turning it over like she was inspecting a price tag. "The design is different. You sure you didn't hire someone? It doesn't really look like your taste." Her father stepped closer. "So, Marin, what are your finances like now? Promotions? Investments? You don't have debt, do you?" The questions felt like needles. Not one of them asked how she had been, if she was happy, or if she needed anything. They wanted numbers, details, access. Grant reappeared behind her with a smug smirk. "You've got a lot of rooms. More than you need." Something in his tone made her skin prickle. As the evening dragged on, they admired everything, but it wasn't admiration. It was calculation. Their eyes moved across her home like they were measuring, judging, planning. By the time they left, Marin finally understood. They weren't here because they missed her. They were here because, for the first time in her life, she had something they wanted. Christmas morning should have been quiet, calm, and warm. Marin had planned to drink coffee by the window, maybe read a book, maybe enjoy the peace of her own home. But before the sun even fully rose, she woke to the sound of voices outside her bedroom door. Her parents' voices. She froze. They were supposed to be gone. They had left the night before, smiling too widely and saying they would see her soon. She thought it was just another strange comment in a long, uncomfortable visit. But now they were back. She moved silently toward the door, leaving it cracked just enough to hear. Their words drifted down the hall like poison. "This house shouldn't belong to her," her mother whispered sharply. "It should go to the real Ellery child." "Grant." Marin felt her heart pound so hard it hurt. Her father sighed, annoyed. "Exactly. Grant deserves it. Marin wouldn't have anything in her life if it weren't for us. We gave her a roof, food, everything. She owes us." "She thinks she's some big success now," her mother added, voice dripping with contempt. "Buying a manor? Showing off. She doesn't even understand how to manage a place like this." Grant's voice chimed in, amused. "We'll handle it. She just needs a little push to understand it's family property now." Family property. The words stabbed straight through her. They kept talking. How Marin was too emotional. How she wouldn't fight back. How taking over the house would be simple. Marin stood there shaking, not from fear but from a cold, simmering disbelief. They truly believed they had a right to everything she built. She stepped back from the door carefully, making sure no floorboard creaked. She listened until they finally walked downstairs and left through the front door, assuming she was asleep. The moment their car engine faded down the driveway, Marin locked every door and window. Her breath trembled, but her mind sharpened. She knew her family, knew their entitlement, their selfishness, their ability to twist any situation to suit themselves. She didn't expect them back that same day. But by noon, she heard tires crunching on the snowy gravel. When she looked through the window, her throat tightened. Her parents, Grant, and a man she didn't recognize, holding a toolbox. A locksmith. Marin opened the door before they could knock. Her mother plastered on a fake concerned smile. "Sweetheart, we're here to help you. You're having an episode. You're not thinking clearly. We need to take care of things for you." Her father nodded like he was doing her a favor. "We're just going to change the locks so the house can be properly managed." Grant smirked at her shoulder, no shame at all. The locksmith stepped toward the front door, confused but doing his job. Marin's voice came out calm, too calm for what was happening. "Step away from my property." But they ignored her and motioned for the locksmith to continue. When she saw him reach for the lock, something in her snapped completely. She stepped outside, blocking his hand, her anger steady and cold. "Touch that lock," she said, "and you're trespassing." Her parents gasped like she was the one doing something wrong. Grant rolled his eyes, muttering, "She's being dramatic." But Marin didn't move. She stood there on her snowy porch, facing the family that had never seen her as anything but a tool. And for the first time, they realized she wasn't the girl they could push anymore. Maren didn't flinch when she saw her parents' car crunch up the gravel driveway again. She had been sitting in the front room with a mug of tea, waiting. Not nervously, strategically. Every light was on, every camera fully charged, every document she needed stacked neatly on the entry table. Her parents thought they were unpredictable geniuses. Maren had known exactly how this would unfold. When the knock came, she didn't rush. She opened the front door slowly, just enough to reveal her calm face and the locksmith standing awkwardly behind her parents. Grant hovered with crossed arms, wearing a smirk that said he believed the house was already his. "Maren," her mother said in a falsely soothing tone, "we're here to help you. You've been overwhelmed. We're going to take control of the property for now. It's what's best." Maren's father added, "Just step aside. We don't want this to become dramatic." The locksmith cleared his throat. I was told the homeowner needed the locks changed." Maren smiled, small, controlled, lethal. "Perfect, because the homeowner is standing right here. And she's been expecting you." Their smug expressions flickered. She stepped out onto the porch, letting the security camera above tilt downward with its soft mechanical hum. Her father noticed it immediately. "What is that?" he snapped. "A camera," Maren replied. "One of 6. Her mother's face paled. "Why would you need cameras?" "Oh," Maren said, keeping her tone light. "Because when people start whispering in your kitchen about taking your home, it's usually a sign they'll try something stupid." Grant stiffened. "You were eavesdropping?" "I was listening," Maren corrected. "There's a difference. And I listened enough to call the sheriff before you even came up the driveway." Right on cue, 2 sheriff's vehicles turned the corner and rolled toward the house. The lights weren't flashing, but they didn't need to be. Presence alone was enough. The locksmith stepped away instantly, hands raised as if distancing himself from a crime scene. "I'm not touching anything. Didn't sign up for this," he muttered, backing toward his truck. Maren walked forward to meet the deputies. "Good morning. These individuals," she gestured toward her parents and Grant, "attempted to enter my property and hired a locksmith under false pretenses. I have audio of them planning it and video of them trying to change the locks." Her mother sputtered, "She's our daughter. Parents have the right to." "No, ma'am," the sheriff said firmly. "You do not have the right to take her home. That's unlawful entry." Her father tried to argue, but every sentence made things worse. Grant muttered something about family rights and looked like he wanted to disappear. In less than 10 minutes, the deputies issued their warning. Leave the property immediately or face charges. Maren stood silently, watching her parents shuffle back to their car with humiliation burning across their faces. They didn't look back. When the driveway finally emptied, Maren stepped inside, locked her own door, and allowed herself the smallest breath of satisfaction. The revenge had begun. Grant caught her just as she was closing the front door. His hand shot out, stopping it with the same entitled ease he'd used his entire life. Maren didn't open it wider. She merely stared at him through the narrow gap, expression flat, tired, done. He forced a smile that didn't come close to touching his eyes. "Look, Maren, you're blowing this way out of proportion. You know life was easier for you. You got the house, the money, the attention." She laughed. A short, sharp, incredulous sound. "Easier for me? Grant, you honestly believe that?" His jaw tightened. "Don't play dumb. You were always the favorite." That word, favorite, hit a switch inside her. Something she had been holding back for years finally snapped free. Maren opened the door fully now, not to welcome him, but to face him head-on. "Let me remind you," she said quietly, "of what my easy life looked like." Grant rolled his eyes, already irritated. But she didn't stop. "You got to fail classes and still be praised for trying. I got perfect grades and was told to stop showing off. You broke things and they laughed. I breathed wrong and I was ungrateful. You ruined holidays, ruined birthdays, ruined peace, and they begged me to understand your temper. I spent my entire childhood shrinking myself so you could feel big." Her voice wavered, not with fear, but with finally releasing weight she'd held too long. "When I cried, Mom said I was being dramatic. When I won awards, Dad said not to gloat because it made you feel bad. Every accomplishment I ever had was treated like an accidental insult to you. And you have the audacity to stand here and say I owe you." Grant's face twisted. "You do. Without them, without us, you'd have nothing." "No," Maren said. "Without you, I'd finally have peace." That stunned him long enough for her to continue. "I'm done. With you. With them. With the version of me you all preferred. Quiet, apologetic, disposable. I'm cutting all of you out permanently. And if any of you come near me or this property again, I'll file a restraining order. I'm not bluffing. Grant's composure cracked instantly. His voice rose into a snarl as he stepped forward. You selfish. Grant! Their mother shouted from the car, already panicked. Their father grabbed his arm as his fury boiled over. He kept yelling, insults, accusations, every bitter word he could spit, as their parents dragged him back toward the vehicle. He kicked at the gravel, shouting that she was nothing, that she was ungrateful, that she'd regret this. But Marin watched him with steady, quiet certainty. For the first time in her life, she wasn't shrinking. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't choosing them over herself. She closed the door on his voice, his rage, and her past. In the silence that followed, she felt something settle inside her, something solid, unshakable, hers. Choosing herself over blood wasn't just an act. It was freedom. Snow fell in slow, deliberate flakes that morning, the kind that softened the world instead of burying it. Marin stood at the kitchen counter of Sableford House, the scent of cinnamon and pine drifting through the air as she stirred hot chocolate for three. It was the first Christmas in her home that didn't feel like a battlefield. No whispering parents. No entitled footsteps wandering her halls. No locks rattling. Just peace. Rhett wandered in first, hair sticking up, wrapped in a blanket like an offended owl. Your house is too big, he muttered, rubbing his eyes. I got lost twice trying to find the bathroom. Marin passed him a mug. Maybe label the halls next time. Tessa arrived next, wearing fuzzy socks and a robe far too glamorous for mourning. She kissed Marin's cheek. Merry Christmas, darling. And thank you for letting us invade your haunted Victorian mansion. It's not haunted. It gives haunted, Rhett said, sipping loudly. Marin only smiled. This gentle banter, this warmth, felt more like family than anything she'd ever lived through growing up. They spent the morning opening small, thoughtful gifts. Nothing extravagant, nothing performative. Rhett gave her a vintage brass key with a tag that read for the doors you open next. Tessa gifted a hand-painted portrait of Sableford House, golden lights glowing in every window. Marin's throat tightened more than she expected. They cooked together badly. Tessa burned the rolls. Rhett underestimated how violently mashed potatoes could splatter, and Marin laughed. An unguarded, real laugh she didn't have to choke down. After lunch, they explored the manor the way children explore forts. Wandering through hallways, arguing about which room was definitely haunted now, discovering creaky floorboards that Marin had somehow never noticed. Later, when her friends settled in the living room, dozing off under blankets while a soft movie played, Marin slipped away for a quiet moment. She walked alone through the long corridor lined with old wooden doors, the winter light pouring through tall windows and stretching across the floor in pale gold. Each step echoed, not painfully, not in emptiness, but in ownership. This was her house. Her life. Built with her effort, her grit, her survival. Not one piece of it was handed to her. Not one corner belonged to someone who believed she wasn't enough. She paused at a window, looking out at the untouched snow blanketing her land. Her parents weren't out there. Her brother wasn't lurking. Their expectations, their cruelty, their grasping hands, they no longer reached this far. And the most unexpected truth of all settled quietly inside her. Revenge hadn't been the moment she kicked them off her property. It wasn't the police report, or the humiliation they brought upon themselves. Her real revenge was this silence. This safety. This home filled with people who chose her because they valued her, not because they wanted something. Family, she realized, wasn't blood. It was the people who didn't try to break into your house on Christmas. Marin turned from the window, her steps steady, her breath calm. For the first time in her life, she walked her halls without feeling small. She had built a life where she wasn't ignored, erased, or controlled. And she wasn't done building yet. Do you think Marin made the right choice by cutting her family out completely? Or do you think she should have tried to make peace with them? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your opinion. And if you love stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story.